Hello friends, today I wanted to share with you a little anecdote that I think is possibly, hopefully full of meaning and will bring light to an issue that is very, very commonly discussed in the literature about INFJs, and that's the whole issue of inferior SE. Inferior SE is something that, if there is such a thing as the language of INFJs, a language that INFJ understand when they're speaking to each other, a language that, elements of language that if it is present, an INFJ tends to be recognized as such. If it is not present, people might wonder, okay, this person is not having that in their languages, it's not experienced, so is that person really an INFJ? Sometimes a lot happens through speech, through exchanging information, communicating, using language. And the language of inferior SE is one that is very typical. And it's one that I discuss in my videos. It's not that I neglect this topic, but I tend to approach the INFJ topic and INFJ identity through a number of other lenses as well, and not to place too much of a focus on this question of inferior SE. And partly because if you take a Jungian approach, a really Jungian approach to the question of type, right, you're really going to be looking at your type in terms of evolutionary dynamics, or developmental steps, developmental stages. So you never completely just think of yourself as, okay, I'm an INFJ or I'm an ENTP right now, once and for all, and this will never change, right? Like these are my qualities and that's over. You always think in terms of, okay, this is where I am at now in my INFJ life, or my ENTP life, or my ISTJ life. And from this perspective, it's always, or at least I've always thought that speaking of inferior SE is very useful, but at the same time, it can be a little bit dangerous as well, because when we speak of inferior SE among INFJs, we tend to think of something statically, not dynamically. We tend to think if you have inferior SE, you're going to be at the mercy of the environment in many ways, of the stimulation of the external world, and easily overwhelmed by that, regardless of your developmental stage. Of course, we might theorize or observe that older INFJs deal with it better, but it's always a question of dealing with, of coping with this environment rather than flourishing, So there's there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling, inferior SE only, the development of SE for an INFJ only carries you to a certain point, which is why I'm certainly not the first to speak about this. Jung was first, speaks of in the inferior function never being able to come to full consciousness, full integration in the life of a person of a particular type who has that inferior function, but can come to a stage of semi-consciousness or semi-integration. And this is the crux of the point I want to make, and I really want to hear what your thoughts are on this, because your thoughts will certainly be informed by your own experiences. I have recently been doing a lot of shopping with my wife for furniture, because we are reorganizing an old bedroom, my grandmother's bedroom, to tell you the whole truth. We're turning it into, my grandmother is still alive and well, doing greatly, but she thought that room was too big and she migrated to a room that's smaller and more fitted to what she wanted. Now that room, we're in the process of turning it into our new living room, new living space, with sofa, nice TV, a dining table, a coffee table, even a desk for me, and we are thinking of paint for the walls, and what kind of lamps are we getting, plants, various, make it really our space. And of course, for this kind of thing, you need to do a lot of shopping. You need to go to these big industrial areas, or these big commercial areas where you have these huge shops. You drive over there, and it's been days and days and days. Last week we did like 5 days in a row of driving to a bunch of different places to look at furniture, to look at lamps, to look at appliances of various kinds. And I cannot tell you how difficult it's been for me. Like the sensory overload of it all has been constant. And it's been so constant and so exhausting that it's led me to think that I don't think that I would have coped much worse when I was 18. That is to say that I am not even sure that I'm coping better now that I'm 37. In other words, this whole idea of a developmental stage theory for the inferior function, I mean, granted, it has some application, but does it have as wide an application as some people think? Or is it ultimately something that we should always keep in mind is pretty definitive about the INFJ, the INTJ by the same token, is that yes, there might be developments, but ultimately the reality is Inferior Se, look at it as a curse or something you have to deal with, but it will always be like that. There will always be this, honestly, occasionally disabling sensory overload when we get in these busy places that are the paradise of extrovert perception, SE or NE, but are just hell for Inferior Se. And so much so that if we see that as really a stereotypical, in a positive sense, a trait of INFJs, then Inferior Se is really one of the big tests. It's regardless of the age you are, you're going to experience this overload and oppressive overload for tasks that seem simple to many other people, and they don't really understand why you seem like you're so helpless in them and you can barely speak anymore because you're so overwhelmed. So again, this has been my experience, despite the joy of the whole idea, right? I in a sense, if I could press a button and see the finished product and enjoy it, I would do it now. Whereas there's a lot of people who say, no, the process, exploring, going to shops, buying stuff, organizing, that's the pleasure. I would not want to skip it for all the world, whereas I would skip it like very happily. And there's a big discrepancy there between me having this position and these other people whom I presume are not INFJs, but perhaps you guys, there will be some among you who will tell me, well, actually, no, like my Inferior Se is more mature. I enjoy doing this. I also see it as important. I love exploring shops and looking for furniture, looking for various objects and spending lots of time in those places. I just cannot fathom it. So I want to know what your thoughts are. In a sense, we're kind of learn together here and try to arrive at a definitive answer regarding, pardon me, the extent to which Inferior Se is really bound to remain strongly Inferior Se. And the opportunity for developments are there, but they're not as big as we think. So please let me know. This is an opportunity for me also to learn from you. And don't forget that I have written 2 books on the INFJ, by the way. My latest one is The Infinite Soul, which is it's a book on INFJ life in the modern world. To find purpose, meaning, and value in life in this world that is often hostile to us. How do we carve out a space for ourselves and be happy? This is this book. It's quite new. It's got good reviews, but I'm really hoping that I get more reviews because it really helps to reference the work online. So if you have got the book on Amazon and you've enjoyed it and you've not left a review, please consider leaving a review. It really, really helps me, okay? And there's, of course, its predecessor, the Ecstatic Soul, which looks more at the, INFJ's mind inside the head, the consciousness of INFJs and the existential constitution that follows. Finally, quick reminder, my Patreon page helps keep the channel afloat. There's been new subscribers lately. Thank you so much, guys, and see you soon. Bye-bye.